Well, hey there. Welcome to the Strong and Sculpted podcast, the podcast by me, Kim Constable, otherwise known as the Sculpted Vegan, about all things strong and, of course, all things sculpted. This week, we're going to talk about back pain because I get a lot of questions in my Facebook groups and also on Instagram and, all the places where you guys write to me and send me all your wonderful questions. And one of the commonly asked questions I get is about how to overcome back pain, especially when squatting in the gym. And I wanted to make a podcast about this because it's something that I suffered from for many years, kind of many months, I suppose, and years actually, whenever I first started training in the gym. And it is something that I have managed to completely and utterly overcome using both my knowledge as a yoga teacher, my experience as a yoga teacher, my experience and knowledge of the human body, and also just years and years and years of practice. So I want to give you the exact strategies today, the way that I overcame my back pain and exactly what you can do to overcome yours, or maybe you don't even have back pain and you just want some helpful hints and tips around squatting or how to squat more, how to lift harder, how to lift better in the gym. It's all going to be in this episode today. And of course, you know that I'm just not going to talk about back pain. I'm going to talk about so much more than back pain. And of course, I'm going to interweave it with some really funny stories. And let me tell you, today is going to be a clinker. You are going to laugh your pants off with some of the stories I have for you. So, just to warm you up for what's coming, just wherever you are, you're on a treadmill, you're in the gym, whatever, you may burst out laughing a few times. That's totally okay. Just be prepared for the fact that you may have headphones in and people around you might be going, what is that crazy bitch laughing at? It's going to be today's podcast. So anyway, before we begin, don't forget it's the end of May 2020. Don't know when you're listening to this, but now I'm recording at the end of May 2020. We are just about to choose and announce the winner of this month's podcast review special, I don't know what it's called, competition. Yep, because we'll call it a competition. So every month at the start of the month, Courtney, my very beautiful assistant, remember I think years ago that I had those, remember Paul Daniels' magic show here in the UK? And here is Debbie, my lovely assistant. So I have Courtney, my lovely assistant. And she goes through all of the reviews that people screenshot and send me on Instagram, and she chooses the best one. And she has the best time reading them, and she reads them out to me, and she reads me all of these lovely reviews. And I'm like, anytime I ever feel bad about myself, not that it happens very often, but anytime I'm ever feeling a wee bit down or a wee bit like, am I doing good things in the world? You know what I do? I go on and I read the podcast reviews because, oh my Lord, people say the loveliest things, not even about me, but just about themselves and what they've learned and how it's changed them. And oh my God, I love reading the reviews. I go on and read them every single month, every single review that's left. I go on and I read through them all. So don't think even if you don't submit your review for the competition that I'm not reading it, because I totally am reading it. And I really should start reading one out every week or something on the podcast. That would be really fun. Anyway, we'll think about that one. But leave a review anywhere that you're listening to this. I don't think you can listen to it on Spotify. Don't leave it on the website. Leave it on iTunes or Podbean or Stitcher. Or you guys know the drill. And then, send me a screenshot on Instagram. If you don't send me the screenshot of your review as a direct message, then you won't be in with a chance of winning, because you have to send it to me as a DM on Instagram, and then we will choose the winner, and you could win a Sculpted Vegan program, any program of your choice, right up to our $1,500 Sculpt and Shred, or the brand new 8-week butt camp program, which is releasing on the 11th of June, which is all about sculpting and shredding those glutes. Oh yes, baby, this is my kick-ass, literally, see what I did there? Kick-ass program for sculpting the most amazing set of cheeks. So yeah, leave the review, and if you ain't in it, you can't win it. Okay, so let's get started with this week's podcast, which again is all about how to eradicate back pain whenever you're squatting, or really just how to improve your squat in general, okay? But it's something that I suffered from. So first of all, today we're going to talk a little bit about, mostly actually, about the transverse abdominis, okay? So many of you have heard about the transverse abdominis. The transverse abdominis is the band of muscles that runs almost like a belt around your deep internal muscles, around your core, like a belt. belt. It's not the rectus abdominis that you would see down the front, which gives you like a six pack. It's the ones that are internal. And so these muscles are so important for learning how to squat correctly, learning how to do anything correctly, actually. And they're also really important for overcoming back pain. But first of all, like how did I first become aware of the transverse abdominis, right? I was not always aware of the transverse abdominis muscles. I have to be honest with you. And the reason why I wasn't aware of the transverse abdominis muscles is because I had no reason to be aware of the transverse abdominis muscles. We call them the TVA for short, okay? No reason to be aware of the TVA, but here's when I first became aware of the TVA. So I started practicing yoga after my second son, Kai, was born. Now, I was a Pilates instructor. I was a Pilates instructor. Loved Pilates, had been training for many years. And my mum had talked me into going and trying Ashtanga yoga. And I fell in love with Ashtanga and started practicing it regularly. So my mum and I would go to yoga practice. Of course, I had I had 3 kids at this point. So I only had 2. I started practicing just after Kai was born. He's now 13. And I continued to practice. And then Maya, I practiced all the way through my pregnancy with Maya. And she then was born 10 years ago. And then after I'd given birth to Maya, I started getting back into yoga. But it was one of these ones where, it was really difficult to go to yoga class in the evening because my husband, I had to leave him at home with 3 young kids and he wasn't used to looking after them by himself, bless his heart. And I was breastfeeding. So you kind of had to time, feeding and yoga classes. And, she would take a bottle when I wasn't there, which was fine. But so anyway, I went to yoga class with my mum this day. And I guess Maya would have been, let me think, she was born in January and this was definitely in the winter. So it must have been maybe, I would say maybe 8 to 12 weeks afterwards. So maybe we're talking here kind of March, right? So maybe March, April time. So it wasn't winter, it was coming into spring. But the nights weren't really bright yet. That's how I remember. So Mum and I went to this yoga class at 7:00. Now we had this yoga teacher called Ronnie. Okay. Now I met Ronnie the other week. Actually, Ronnie I'm sure he would be nearly 80 now. Right? And he's still teaching yoga, but he was amazing. And whenever I tell this story in Belfast, people go, "Oh my God, I know Ronnie!" Like he's such an institution, right? Ronnie is like an institution yoga teacher, and he loved to talk about the different things you could visualize, and he loved to do a seated meditation at the beginning and at the end, and he really saw yoga as a very spiritual practice. Even though he practiced Ashtanga, he really saw it as a very spiritual practice. And so whenever we were practicing, he would say, he would say, okay, sun salutations, 5 A's, 5 B's, which is Surya Namaskara A, Surya Namaskara B. Okay. So we would say 5 A's, 5 B's. And then he would walk around the class and he would do it almost like what's called a Mysore class. So Mysore is Mysore. It's where you go to an Ashtanga yoga class and you just practice, you do your own practice. So the teacher doesn't lead the practice. The primary series yourself. You would do your own practice. The teacher would come and, adjust you or help you with your practice. They just walk around, wherever you are in your sequence. So he would almost do it like a Mysore practice a little bit. And he would say, okay, everyone begin their sun salutations. So this particular day, I had decided that rather than doing the traditional Ashtanga practice, during my sun salutations, would raise one leg up into the air. So it's called one-legged dog. And then you do this thing where you raise one leg up into the air and then you open your hip. So you kind of keep your hands on the mat and you twist your body, you twist your lower body, your hips slightly sideways. So you stack one hip on top of the other. And then you kind of, then you bend your leg at the knee and you dangle it down behind you. It's almost like you're trying to touch your butt with your heel. Okay. So I decided I would do this on one side and then on the other side because it felt so good. So I, did it, swept my arms into the air and placed them on the ground, jumped back into chaturanga, lowered down, inhaled up dog, back into dog head down. And then instead of staying in dog head down for 5 breaths, which is what you do, I swept one leg into the air and I opened my hip and I stretched and it felt so good. And then I put it down. I stretched the other one into the air. I opened my hip and then I set it back down. I stretched back into dog head down and my mum was practicing beside me doing her practice and it was so good. And so then I rocked forward and then I rocked back and then I jumped to the top of the mat. And as I landed, I went like this massive fanny fart. Okay. Now I know in America, you guys call so we have it backwards, right? So here in Belfast, your fanny is your front bum. And I think in America, your fanny is like what we would call your butt or your ass. So, but here your fanny is the other one. It's your vagina. Okay. So I jumped to the front of the mat, not realizing that during the time when I had raised one leg into the air and opened the hip and raised the other leg in the air and opened the hip, that I had had a massive intake of air because I had given birth to my third child about, 12 weeks previously, maybe even only 8 weeks previously. And let's just say that after 3 natural births within, 4 years, it was a little spacious up there, okay? There was a little more room to take in a little more air. So so I obviously, by opening my hip, had kind of, disturbed the equilibrium of, let's just say what should have stayed closed had opened momentarily, and there'd been like an intake of air, which I didn't even realize because it had never happened to me before. And I jumped to the top of the mat, and it was like this massive, loud fart noise, right? And my mom looked at me sideways with wide eyes, and I was like, oh, whenever you have this horrified moment, like the whole room was quiet and everyone was, in the middle of their practice. And of course, and then a couple of people started to like started to snicker. Ronnie, bless his heart, had heard it all before. Farting is a very common occurrence in yoga. He had, he just kept going and going. He didn't, he didn't even bat an eyelid. I was absolutely and utterly mortified, but I was mortified to the point where I was bent double with laughing. Like my mum was was bent double, holding her stomach and stumping her foot and snorting. Like whenever my mum, honestly, it makes me laugh so much even thinking about it. Like my mum is the kind of person, like if you were to stub your toe or hurt yourself, like my auntie cracked her tooth, right? Fell and cracked her tooth recently on the step. And my mum went to her house and she was like, oh my God, the most terrible thing has happened. And mum said, what? And Barbara took her hand away from her mouth and showed mum her, like she'd cracked her front tooth. Well, mum was in absolute stitches. She was bent double. She couldn't stop laughing. And that's the kind of person my mum is. So she was very, of course, inconspicuously not at the front of her mat, snorting, bent double, stamping her foot with laughter because she couldn't contain herself, which of course then made me laugh. And the two of us were in an absolute and utter, her like a heap at the top of our yoga mats, unable to go on and do any more Sorry Namaskara, right? And of course, but it was just the with me jumping to the top of the mat, right? There was a forceful expulsion of air. Okay. Now, why was there a forceful expulsion of air? Well, simply because I did not know how to turn on my transverse abdominis. In fact, I didn't even know what the transverse abdominis was at this point. Why did I not need to know? Or why did I not know? Because I had no need to know before I had kids, and before I gave birth. My snatch was tighter than a Roman wrestler's headlock. Like I had no need to know about the transverse abdominis. There was no forceful expulsion of air because it was all tight down there, right? But let me tell you, see, giving birth to 3 kids in 4 years doesn't do wonders for you. I always say to my husband, I'd be like a 50-year-old hooker, sit in a bar stool and slide right to the floor. So anyway, I did tell you this. This is going to be a funny one, this episode. So something only becomes fixable, right? Whenever it's a problem. Until you know it's a problem, you don't know to fix it because people don't buy prevention, they buy cure. This is what I learned very early on in my marketing journey. I remember, I think I was listening to Marie Forleo, who's an amazing marketer, and she was talking about how, just people don't buy prevention, okay? They buy cure. Like, what does that mean? Well, whenever we got our dog Buddy, my mum used to breed and show dogs. We used to have like 40 or 50 dogs at any one time. So, and I am, massively into dog training, dog psychology. I've done a lot of dog training and a lot of, reading of books and stuff. And so I know a lot about dogs. But whenever we got Buddy, I never thought to get worming tablets when I bought him. And we hadn't taken him to the vet. He had his first set of injections. So, he wasn't due to go for a second set. And so we couldn't figure out what was wrong with his digestion. And anyway, I took him to the doctor and the doctor was like, oh, I think he has a massive amount of worms. He really needs worms. The doctor gave him a worming tablet and then sent me home with worming tablets to give to him periodically. I think it was 1 a month over the next 6 months or whatever. And of course, then whenever Buddy, let me tell you, whenever then he went to the toilet, oh, holy shit, I've never seen as many worms in my entire life. It was totally disgusting. Anyway, I digress. Why? What has this got to do with prevention rather than cure? Or fanny farting during yoga? Well, Buddy, I would never have thought, whenever we went to get a Boston Terrier puppy, I would never have thought to go to the vets and buy worming tablets, okay? Because I didn't think that we needed worming tablets, and you don't go and buy worming tablets unless your dog has worms. People don't buy prevention, they buy cure. That's why you can never market general health to people. People don't buy health. If people feel that they're healthy, they won't buy more health unless they have a problem they think needs fixed. So I did not need to know about the transverse abdominis because, like I said, my snatch was tighter than a Roman wrestler's headlock, and it did not need to, I didn't need to know to turn these muscles on because they were naturally tight and turned on. But after giving birth, everything turned off and became a little more roomy down there. And up until that point, my yoga practice had been very quiet and peaceful, but it was not to be anymore. I had to say goodbye to a quiet yoga practice and embrace the fact that this was now the new norm for me. And I became obsessed with finding out about the transverse abdominis, okay? Simply because I'd always heard in yoga, all my yoga teachers were saying like, oh, turn on your, in yoga, it's called your Uddiyana Bandha, right? So turn on your Uddiyana Bandha. And they would have talked about, the drawing up. And Ronnie, my teacher, talked about your locks, drawing up your locks. And I'd be like, enough of this shit. Just get on with it. Fuck's sake. I'm not here to bloody listen about my bloody locks. And honestly, and he used to talk about the distance in a man when there's different yoga poses where you put your heel up into your perineum, okay? And it's one of the more advanced ones where you bring your foot up underneath you put your heel up into your perineum. And Ronnie used to talk about the distance in a woman, the distance between, oh my God, what was it? The distance between Athens and Paris is greater than the distance between Athens and Venice. And I used to be like, oh, fuck no, I don't want to think about Ronnie's Uddiyana Bandha or Ronnie's distance between Athens and Paris, to be honest. But it was actually quite a good analogy, Athens and Paris and Athens and Venice. So anyway, I knew about locks. I knew about your transverse abdominis, I knew about your Uddiyana Bandha, but I kind of knew it all in theory, okay? I knew it all in theory, and I'd heard, them talking about pulling these locks up and stuff, but I didn't really understand why it was necessary for yoga, or even, not even necessary for yoga, but why it was now necessary for me, young mother of 3 children, birthed naturally through the vaginal canal. The transverse abdominis became extremely interesting to me. So first of all, let's break down what is the transverse abdominis, okay? Or let's break down the abdominal muscles, and then I'll tell you why they're important, not only for yoga, but for squatting and for everything else you do in your life. So let's talk about them first of all, listed from the most superficial to the deepest, right? So the muscles that normally everybody wants, okay? People write to me and they go, I just want a six pack. I just want to have a six pack. Everybody just wants to have a six pack, okay? Your six pack is called your rectus abdominis, okay? This muscle it's also known as the six pack, but it's also the most superficial of the abdominal muscles, and it gives you that washboard look that you often see that fitness models have. Now, I do not have a good rectus abdominis, A, because I never work them, and B, because it's not something that's important to me. I've never craved a six pack, and also I've had 4 kids, so it's very important. It's very hard for me to get a six pack. So the function of the rectus abdominis is basically just to flex and stabilize the spine. The rectus abdominis are the most superficial muscles. Everybody wants to have them, but having a good set of rectus abdominis muscles does not mean that you have a strong core. In fact, people used to come to me for handstand training whenever I taught yoga, and they used to say, oh yeah, I have a very strong core. And I used to go, yeah, people always tell me that. And they really don't have a strong core, because to me, when you have a strong core, you have a very strong transverse abdominis, TVA. Having a good rectus abdominis does not equal a strong core, just FYI, because those are very superficial muscles. So the next muscles from outward to inward, if you like, are the external obliques. So these muscles are located on both sides of the rectus abdominis. So I have really good external obliques from doing years and years of yoga, years and years of twisting. It's like that shark teeth effect that runs down either side of your rectus abdominis. Just underneath your ribs, or just down below your ribs, or actually even on your ribs as well. People always think they're my ribs. Whenever people love to slag me off, people who don't know me on Instagram, they'll go, look at her ribs, that's disgusting. And I'm like, those aren't my ribs, sweetheart. Those are my rectus, or those are my external oblique muscles. So they're not ribs. That doesn't mean I'm skinny. It means I'm muscly. So they play an important role just literally in flexing the spine, rotating the torso, and sideways bending. And that's it. Okay. They're superficial muscles as well. They're on the outside. They're just really to move the body around, move the musculature, keep, the bones in place and all that kind of stuff. They don't really have any deep function. But then, of course, once we get a little deeper, we go into the internal obliques. So these muscles lie just below the external obliques, and they act in a similar manner in terms of function, but they are slightly deeper. in terms of you need to know how to turn them on a little more whenever you're doing your deeper yoga poses or your handstands or headstands or those kinds of things. So a lot of people don't know that inversions in yoga or gymnastics or in calisthenics or whatever, all of your inversions stem from your balance in your inversions. Well, it stems from internally rotating your arms, twisting your biceps forward, but it also stems from, a lot of it comes from your core, from knowing how to turn on your TVA and your internal obliques. And then of course the last muscles left in the center of the body or around the obliques, or not the obliques, sorry, around the stomach area, are the transverse abdominis, or is the transverse abdominis, should I say. So, because it's a collective noun. This muscle is the deepest of the abdominal group, okay? And it helps with breathing, but more importantly, it activates the core and stabilizes the pelvis and the lower back during most movements. So these muscles run like a belt, right? They run like a belt all the way around your spine, above your hips. They basically keep your whole body from flopping and bending, and they keep everything completely stable. You're supposed to activate them whenever you move, whenever you squat, whenever you lift heavy weights, and you're supposed to know how to turn them on so that you can protect the other muscles in your body, especially in your lower back. And where this first really became apparent to me was whenever I started squatting in the gym. So up until I started squatting, or I started in the gym in 2016, I was only practicing yoga, and I had been doing a lot of squatting over the years, but not squatting with weights, squatting in yoga. Now, a yogic squat is very different to a gym squat. With a yogic squat, you would squat right down into a seated position. You would try to push your tailbone towards the floor. You push your knees apart, and then quite often you will bring your elbows to the insides of your knees, and then you'll bring your hands into prayer position and try and push your knees wider. So you're basically trying to lift your chest, raise your chest up, sit with a very, very straight spine, and put all your weight in your heels. A lot of people who don't have open hips can't sit like this. They can't sit with their heels on the ground. They have to raise their heels up on blocks, and that's just because they don't have the openness in the hips. So I had been doing a lot of squatting. So whenever I first went into the gym and I started training with Curtis, who was my trainer at the time, I was really like, whenever he said we're going to squat, I was like, oh yeah, baby, I'm so good at squatting. Like I was like, this is going to be so easy for me. And so he said, let's just squat with the bar, which is only 20 kilos, just to see, how you do your squat. So I, of course, then, I was so proud of how deep my squat was, because I had, been practicing for years. So I put this bar on my back and I squatted, right down to the ground and then pushed back up, and then squatted right down and pushed back up again. So like literally I went down. So I did my full yogic squat before pushing back up. So I stood with my feet a little bit wider than, I probably would stand with them now. And I squatted my ass right to the grass and pushed back up. And Curtis was like, oh, that's really good. You have a good deep squat. And I was like, well, thank you, because I was like really into impressing Curtis. I was like, oh, I really want him to see how good I am. You always want to impress your trainer in the beginning. Now I couldn't give a fuck about impressing Mark. I just want to run away from him most of the time, actually. I'm not into impress him anymore. I'm into trying to get him to stop pushing me so hard. So anyway, I was squatting in the gym with Curtis, but what I realized was my back would get really sore after squatting. And then I also noticed that the more weight I put on, I couldn't go quite so deep. So with 20 kilos, then you put like 5 kilos on each side and then 10 kilos on each side. And we probably went up to about 40 kilos in that first set. And as I tried to squat right down with my ass to the grass, the way I had with 20 kilos, my back was killing me. Like it was really sore in my back. And I had a sore back anyway. Ever since I had my kids, my lower back was always sore. It was sore during yoga. It was sore, especially after back bending. My back does not like back bending. But of course, me being me, I decided that the only way to stop my back being sore during back bending was to back bend more. Of course, most people would go, shouldn't back bend because it obviously caused me pain. Nope. Kim goes, shouldn't back bend causes pain? Let's do it more. Let's do it more often. It was almost like I believed I could break my back into not being painful. I was like, if I just go to deeper back bends, no, that is not the way to do life. Okay. See now, in yoga, I don't back bend. I do like cobra poses, and I do, even upward facing dog and that kind of stuff. I even did Urdhva Dhanurasana, which is a wheel pose, in one of my practices the other day. But see all the big, deep back bends, I just do not do them anymore. Okay. Because they just hurt my back. So I did have a sore back, and as soon as squatting started to hurt my back, I was like, oh no, oh no. And I said to Curtis, oh my God, this is really sore. And I went home that night and my back was agony. And the next day my back was agony, and I went in to train again. I trained with them 4 times a week. And whenever we went to train legs again and it was squatting, I was like, no, I don't want to do free bar squatting. And like the gym I was training in didn't have a lot of machines. They had leg press, but it wasn't like kitted out like Mark, my trainer's gym, is now, where I never do free bar work ever. Okay. Everything I do is machine. So it wasn't kitted out that way. And every week I dreaded squatting because my back was in agony. And I kept saying to Curtis, I think there's something wrong. I don't think I should be squatting. And I was really disheartened because I wanted to squat. I wanted to, build muscles. And I believed that, and actually, well, the reason why I started in the gym was because I wanted to build up my glutes. That's the only reason why I actually went to the gym in the first place. And then, of course, once I was there, I realized I was born to do this. This was what I was meant to be doing with my life. And of course, I loved it, but the reason why I went is because I wanted to build up my glutes. And so I wanted to squat because I wanted to build up my glutes, but I really just was not prepared for how painful it was. And so I thought to myself, you know what? There must be something that I can do, or there must be a reason why this is happening, right? So and there was. So anyway, I went deep into research into what causes back pain when squatting, all this kind of stuff, because I was determined to overcome the problem. And I found out 2 things, okay? So here's what I found out. The first thing I found out was that I wasn't turning on my transverse abdominis while squatting. Now, I was a highly experienced yoga teacher. I knew exactly what the transverse abdominis was after my fanny farting incident during my yoga practice. I had learned how to make sure that never, ever happened again. And by the way, just for those of you who practice yoga and have had kids, a really good way to have that not happen is wear a tampon during yoga. Yes, indeed. If there's something plugging it, you don't have that, because sometimes we forget to turn on our transverse abdominis during yoga. And, it's very hard to keep your vagina clenched the entire time you're practicing. Like, it really is hard. It requires some serious muscle control. So I just find for those times when I forget, or when I'm feeling a bit tired or whatever, and I can't keep it turned on the entire time, a Super Plus tampon just takes all the pressure. So it takes off all the pressure. So anyway, I digress slightly, but I did learn that one of the reasons, or one of the things you need to do when you squat, is to keep your transverse abdominis muscles turned on the entire time. And I was like, oh, those transverse abdominis muscles are for much more than just yoga. Hello, ding, ding, ding. So I was like, wow, well, I can really bring in my yoga teacher training, or my yoga training, into all of this, and I can use my knowledge of the transverse abdominis to turn it on when squatting to stop my lower back pain. So that's the first thing I did, which massively, massively helped. The second thing that I did, or that I realized, was that my glutes weren't firing the way they should have been during a squat. So how this happened was, I was reading, Brett Contreras and I have become great friends, actually. I interviewed Brett Contreras on my podcast the other week. He is known as the glute guy. He is literally an ass man, which has terrible connotations that we won't talk about. But anyway, so Brett and I have become really good friends. But I bought his book whenever, of course, I was buying everything to do with booty building, and it was called Strong Curves, one of his books, Strong Curves. And it was literally an ass Bible, okay? And I remember reading one paragraph in it, which basically said the glutes are the strongest muscle in the body, and they are supposed to fire all the time. And if they're not firing correctly, then the lower back will pick up the work of the glutes. And I was like, what? Like, oh my God, this is exactly what's happening to me. So I realized that after years and years of practicing yoga, I had a really good glute medius, which is the upper portion, almost like behind your hip, if you like. So your glutes are split into your glute maximus, your glute medius, and your glute minimus. Now, the minimus is the very deep muscle, which kind of attaches your medius to your hip bone, right? And then the maximus is the big, lovely, full bit. Well, it's supposed to be big, lovely, full, round bit at the back. So whenever you're twisting in yoga, like whenever you're doing your twisting poses, twisting lunges, Parvita Trikonasana, which is your twisting triangle pose, your glute medius is turned on. You use your glute medius a lot in yoga. So I had a very strong, very well developed glute medius, okay? I did not have a very strong or very well developed glute maximus, because there nowhere in yoga training do you do any kind of thrusting, glute bridging, squatting. I mean, you do squat, but whenever you squat, you go down into a yogic squat. You don't go down into a strength squat. The squat is meant to stretch the hip muscles, not to strengthen the glutes. And so my glute maximus really had no fullness. It wasn't firing correctly. And that's why it was like a saggy, my bum was almost like a point, right? It went out at the top where my glute medius was, and then it just went straight in a diagonal line to where it joined the top of my hamstring. There was no fullness in that part. So what I realized after reading Brett's book was the reason why I was having a sore back during squatting wasn't because it was damaging me or hurting me, but because my glutes weren't firing the way they were supposed to. So my lower back was picking up the work. And that was completely transformational for me. I was like, shit, no way. Like this is amazing for me to know. So I set about really learning how to turn on the glutes. I did a lot of the exercises Brett suggested in the book, a lot of, even just squeezing my glutes when I was walking, squeezing them when I was sitting, doing different glute bridges and clams and all different stuff just to wake my glutes up, right? Because your glutes will turn off because of inactivity. It's a known phenomenon. Your glutes are actually designed to protect your body. So if you stub your toe, the Brett talked about this in the book as well. If you stub your toe, for example, your glutes will turn off to protect your toe, because your glutes are a really powerful muscle. And if your toe is really, really painful and you're trying to hobble along, your glutes will turn off. So they're not powering you forward more, so that you're putting more pressure on your toe. So once I learned how to activate my transverse abdominis, which I'm going to teach you how to do in a second, by the way, prepare for more giggles. So once I learned how to turn on my transverse abdominis and how to activate and fire up my glutes, everything changed. The pain completely disappeared. It completely disappeared during my squats, and it completely disappeared the day after and the day after. And I can honestly say that now, this is 2020, May 2020, 4 years after I started training in April 2016, I am completely 100% pain-free. I lived with niggly, nagging lower back pain for years. And I mean years and years and years. It was constant. And I can tell you now, after getting we got a new mattress on the bed as well. We got a new memory foam mattress, a really expensive mattress, and it's absolutely and utterly incredible. It just molds to my body. So when I sleep on my back, my whole body is supported. That's another reason why people's back gets sore, by the way, because we have a natural curve in our spine. So when we lie on our back, our spine is naturally curved. And if we lie in that position for too long, it makes the pelvis ache. It makes the lumbar spine area ache. So if you lie on your back, you should always put a pillow under your knees to flatten your spine on the ground, because that takes the pressure off the lower back. So basically turning on my transverse abdominis when squatting, and also learning how to fire up my glutes and making them work correctly, completely and utterly changed my whole squat. It made me stronger. I mean, now I would squat 180 kilos in the gym. Now, not with a free bar. I would squat it on a V squat, which is where it's a fixed machine with 2 pads that go in your shoulders, and your toes are turned slightly up and your heels down, so you can go really, really, really deep to fire up the glutes. And I would squat 180 kilos for 10 reps, which is pretty strong. So just to let you know, like, that is where I've got to in 4 years. So how do you turn on your transverse abdominis, right? You're probably now going, okay, this is great. I'm totally in. You've sold me, Kim. I've got a sore back and I really want to squat more. So I want to learn about this transverse abdominis muscle and how to turn it on. So I'm going to teach you exactly how to do it, okay? So years ago, whenever I was a Pilates instructor, I remember doing my Pilates teacher training. And I would go to, and they would talk about your transverse abdominis and how to turn it on. And they taught us this method of, and they would say, so stand with your feet, hip distance apart, and, tuck your pelvis ever so slightly under. And then I want you to imagine that you are going up in an elevator. Okay. So they would say, imagine that, starting, and they would try and skirt around it. Right now, I'm just like, your vagina, right? Bring your awareness to your vagina. When you say that, women go, okay, I know exactly where that is, right? right? Whenever you skirt around it and you go, and we're so worried about saying things like penis and vagina, and like these are parts of your body. Your penis is like your head, okay? Well, like it's not, but it's still a body part, just like your vagina is. So I never was like, oh, bring your awareness to your perineum. And then people are like, perineum, what's that? Where the fuck's my perineum? I have no idea, So anyway, they were like, bring your awareness to your perineum and then imagine that you are going up in an elevator. And I'm like, no, I'm going up in an elevator in my vagina. Okay, I'm just going to stick with it. But imagine like there's an elevator going up and it's going, and here's to the first floor. And they talked about an elevator. Another one was a zip, right? Imagine you're putting on a pair of jeans and you're zipping 1 inch is the first floor and 2 inches the second floor. And you're standing there for ages like, yeah, okay, yeah. Like drawing it up and drawing it up and drawing it up a little further. But it was also fucking complicated, okay? It was also fucking complicated because here's the thing about learning, right? Learning is either inductive or deductive, right? The kind of learning that I love to do with my kids or people who come into my company or whatever, or even just my students in my programs, I like to do a process of inductive learning. So what's the difference, right? Deductive learning is the kind of learning that they teach you in school. It's where you sit in a classroom and the teacher is at the blackboard and they teach you about a subject and you listen to what the teacher says and then you write it down. So you're learning inductively. The teacher's saying, here is the information and you're supposed to take in the information, retain it, write it down and learn it through memory. Okay. Memory, deductive learning is very memory based. School is very memory based. That's why a lot of people in school, they think that they're stupid and they go, oh, I'm so stupid or whatever. I never did good in school. Well, I've tried to explain to people, the ones who do good in school are the ones who have really good memories. And the ones who don't do so good in school are the ones who learn differently. People who are very visual do really well in school because they have great memories. And people who are very auditory don't do as well in school. So inductive learning is where someone gives you information and you take it on good faith. Deductive learning is where you touch it, feel it, smell it, or experience it in your body. So if you can experience something in your body, you have a visceral feeling about this thing, then you will be much, much more likely to remember it. So, and what's that quote about how people will not remember what you said, but they'll always remember how you made them feel, something like that. And it's true. Like if you have a visceral experience about someone, like if I said to you, here, did you know that Johnny's really good in bed? You'd be like, oh, Johnny's really good in bed, is he? That's great. And you may imagine Johnny in bed. You may even imagine Johnny's penis. You may, whatever. So you're thinking about that, whatever. But then one night, so imagine we work with Johnny, okay? And so then one night you dream that you're having sex with Johnny. How many times have you done that, right? You wake up and you've dreamt you've had sex with someone, then you go into work and you're like, oh, like you look at them in a completely different way, don't you? You're suddenly like, oh, and then you remember the dream because you were feeling and experiencing the feelings in your dream, right? And so suddenly now you're looking at Johnny in a completely different way. And then Johnny continues to be a dick in work. And you're like, yeah, you weren't like that in my dream. Slide on. So that is, even though it was a dream, that is actually induction. Okay. That is induction. That's rather than me saying Johnny's really good in bed. In your dream, you experienced Johnny being in bed. Maybe you actually were in bed with Johnny at some point, right? So that's, you got an inductive experience of how good Johnny was in bed. Someone told you he was good in bed. Deductive. You actually went to bed with Johnny. Inductive. Okay. You get the feeling? Okay. So here's where I'm going with this. You're like, where the fuck is she going with this? I swear I always bring it back, don't I? I'm having so much fun with this. This is so honestly so much fun. So here's how you turn on your transverse abdominis, okay? This is whenever I teach people, I'm going to physically teach you how to do it. So wherever you are, whether you're walking with your dog, maybe you're sitting, maybe you're lying or whatever, I want you to try this method, okay? So whenever I teach people this method, they absolutely love it because it makes so much sense for them and they never forget it, right? Once I've taught this to you, you will never forget how to turn on your transverse abdominis. So there's two ways that you can do it. Well, not two ways. There's a way for female and a way for men, okay? So if you're a man listening to this podcast, hopefully not, because I do talk about a lot of female stuff. You've probably turned it off by now if you are a man. But if you're a very open-minded man and you're still with me, here's how you turn on your transverse abdominis, okay? I want you to imagine that you are full flow peeing, right? You're full stream peeing, and I tell you to stop midstream. Okay. So you're peeing, and then I go 3, 2, 1, stop. Right. So whenever you stop mid pee, that is how you turn on your transverse abdominis. Right. And you can try that on now. You can be like, oh, even if you're a woman, you can try that on what it's like to stop midstream, right? So that's how a man turns on his transverse abdominis. So if you're a man and you're working on your squat, you're even working on your handstands, your inversions or whatever, you need to turn on your transverse abdominis. Imagine you're stopping peeing before you do it. Before you squat or before you handstand or whatever you're doing. Now, for a woman, it's slightly different, okay? So for a woman, how you turn on your transverse abdominis is, I want you to imagine that you are sucking a smoothie through a straw using your vagina. Not even kidding. And whenever I teach this in my yoga classes, women like literally, you can see their faces, like they go, and they take on, they have this little like frown, that little like look up to the side, one eye slightly squinted. They're like, oh, and you can see them like imagining what it would be like to suck a smoothie through a straw using your vagina. But truly it is, isn't it fucking epic? Like try it now for me. No matter where you are, I want you to bring your awareness to your vagina. And then I want you to imagine that you are sucking a smoothie through a straw, a very thick smoothie, okay? This smoothie was made with loads of banana, maybe some avocado, a couple of chia seeds in there just to, thicken things up a little. And now you have to suck that entire smoothie through the straw using your vagina. Now your transverse abdominis is turned on. Isn't it absolutely epic? Okay, but that's just the first part of turning on your transverse. So men, you're peeing and stopping. Women, you're sucking your smoothie. Once you've sucked your smoothie as hard as you can suck it, you draw your navel towards your spine. That's the second part of turning on your transverse. And it's the part that many people forget when they're teaching you. So whenever I was being taught in Pilates, they only taught us about, zipping up your jeans or the elevator or whatever. They didn't actually teach you about drawing your navel towards your spine. But that is the really important second part of turning on your transverse abdominis. So you're sucking your smoothie through your straw. When you've sucked as hard as you can, now draw your navel in towards your spine. So you're pulling your belly button backward towards your spine. Now your transverse abdominis is completely and utterly turned on. Now, where I learned that from is actually an amazing yoga teacher in a handstand workshop that I went to once. It's not even mine. I can't even remember his name. Patrick someone, I think. And it was years ago in a yoga workshop, and he was teaching us inversions, teaching us handstands. And he said, the main thing, a lot of handstand instructors, what they will do is they will teach you to work on your core. So you will do all kinds of sit-ups and core work and different, and L-sits and stuff like this in order to learn how to hold your handstand. Because when you're in a handstand, your body should be like a boomerang position, a very slight boomerang position. And your navel should be, your transverse abdominis should be pulled up and your navel drawn towards your spine. And that is what gives you your balance in handstand. So no banana backing in handstand. You have to turn that on in handstand. But also it is what protects your lower back during squatting and especially during hip thrusting. Okay. So what I started doing once I learned this, I learned it in yoga years ago, but once I realized that I needed to turn on my transverse and strengthen my glutes, I started applying this to all of my gym work. And it was an absolute game changer for me. So here's what I do whenever I squat. I'm going to give you whenever I squat and whenever I hip thrust, I'm going to give you my exact techniques so you can practice them in the gym if you're doing these exercises. So whenever I'm squatting, I put the bar, so let's say I'm doing a free bar squat, but any kind of squat though, it doesn't matter. I put the bar onto my back, okay? And so let's say it's a free bar. And then I roll it down so it's sitting on my lower traps just above my shoulder blades. It's called a low bar squat. And then I try to bend the bar around my back, okay? That then locks in the top of your body. So whenever you squat, a lot of people dip forward at the bottom, okay? They don't lock in their upper body. They balance the bar on the back of their neck, and they tend to then, with the weight of the bar, whenever they squat down, they tend to dip forward at the front. That puts a huge amount of pressure on the back. So you want to, the whole time, be forcing your chest up and forward and trying to bend the bar around your back. Then as you're getting set up, before you ever lower down, okay? Then what you want to do is suck your smoothie through your straw using your vagina, draw your navel towards your spine and turn on your glutes. I want you to do that now while you're listening to this. I want you to suck up, okay? And then I want you to draw your navel towards your spine, and then I want you to squeeze your glute muscles. Actually squeeze them, okay? Now you're ready to squat. When you have your chest forced up, bending the bar around your back, drawn up through your transverse abdominis, and your glutes are turned on, and then you squat down and you don't let go of any of those on the squats. Even if you squat down in your squat, you have to keep your transverse abdominis turned on the whole time. And then you won't drop like a stone and bounce, which is where many people hurt their knees or they hurt themselves during a squat. When you keep all of that turned on the whole way down and you lower with control and then push all the way back up again, keeping everything squeezed on the way back up, your lower back is completely protected because your glutes are now firing and doing the work, and your transverse abdominis, your TVA, is like, it's like wearing a belt around your core. So it's protecting your spine, protecting your back, protecting your lumbar spine, all of that. And your glutes are doing the work that they are supposed to do. Because here's the thing about squatting, right, that many people don't know. If you only squat to parallel, your glutes don't turn on. Your glutes only turn on when they are in the full stretch position. It's called mechanical stress. So there's two ways that the muscle grows. The muscle grows through mechanical stress or metabolic stress. Mechanical stress is where the muscle is either stretched or contracted to its full extent. And whenever you have both of those coming into play, that's when the muscle grows the most. So you cause loads of micro tears. So if you squat all the way down with your ass to the grass, or as low as you possibly can, certainly as far below parallel as you can go, but you don't want to butt wink at the bottom, okay? So butt winking is where people squat all the way down and their butt winks under, like it curves under. You should be pushing back in a squat, like almost pretending that you're trying to sit back on a low bench behind you. So you never let your butt wink forward when you squat. You always push back when you squat. So if you imagine you're trying to activate your glutes by squeezing them, and then you're pushing your butt back so far that the glute muscles get stretched like crazy, that's what causes the micro tears. And then you have to squeeze your glutes to power you back up. Whenever you take all of the focus of your squat out of your back, out of your chest, out of your core, everywhere, and you focus on your glutes, it changes everything, because you've got your TVA turned on, you've got your chest forced forward, and as you go down with control, keeping your attention and your awareness on your glutes the whole time, your glutes stay turned on, and then as you go below parallel, your glutes fire to power you back up. If you only go to where your legs are parallel in a squat, then your glutes never turn on and your quads pick up all of the work. And also what happens is if you go down to parallel and then pause and push back up, because you haven't gone through the full range of motion, you've missed out on all of that kinetic chain energy. So if you go all the way down to your full extension, what happens is if you go to where you can go no further, then your feet kick in. So it goes your feet, then your ankles, then your shins, then your knees, then your quads, then your hamstrings and your glutes and your back. So everything, it kicks in like a chain, boom, 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 all the way back up to power you all the way back up. If you only go to parallel, which many people do because they're scared to go any deeper, so they kind of stop and jar at parallel, your glutes are never turned on. And if your glutes are never turned on, it pushes all of the work into your quads and into your lower back. That's why squatting only works if you go below parallel to build the glutes. People who say, oh, how do you build the glutes? Oh, you have to squat. No, you have to squat deep, okay? Squatting to parallel does not build the glutes because they're not activated nor turned on. You haven't exerted any mechanical stress on them. Mechanical stress is where the muscle is stretched to its full capacity, causing micro tears, or contracted to its full capacity, causing micro tears. Squatting to parallel does not do either of those things. Now, metabolic stress is where whenever you're doing high volume exercises and you get like a pump. So people who are doing like cable glute kickbacks or frog pumps or hyperextensions or reverse hypers or those kinds of things, so you will feel a burn in your glutes, but metabolic stress doesn't cause as much damage as mechanical stress. So people will say, but I felt such a burn in my glutes. Why are they not growing? Well, because the burn was just lactic acid. So it's just lactic acid filling the muscle. You get a fluid and a blood pump to the muscle. Yes, some of the muscles are damaged. There is damage to the muscle, and damage is where the muscle grows. So there is damage to the muscle, but not as much as mechanical stress. So in order to build the muscle really fully, you need to have both mechanical and metabolic stress. That's why whenever I train legs, I do a warm-up exercise, then I do 2 massive compound exercises, 2 big squats, ass to the grass, and then I do to finish your exercises just to burn out the muscle. So your training needs to have both, okay? So whenever, and then the other way that you can apply the transverse abdominis, this one's a really, really important one, okay? If you do hip thrusts in the gym, so hip thrusts are where you have a barbell over your hips and then your back is leaning against a bench, right? Even if you do this from the ground, which are actually called glute bridges, I always call glute bridges the ones that you do with a barbell on a Smith machine or whatever with your back on a bench. But apparently the more correct term, according to my good friend Brett Contreras, is your glute bridge would be on the ground, where you have your back on the ground and you would be doing a hip thrust if you had your back on the bench. So, So glute bridge is on the ground, a hip thrust is back on the bench. So if you are doing a hip thrust, I see a lot of people doing hip thrusts and they go, oh, I can't do them because they hurt my back. And the first thing I say is, you don't have your TVA turned on, okay? I'm going to teach you a very specific method here of how to turn on your TVA whenever you are doing a hip thrust, right? So do you remember what we talked about, sucking a smoothie through a straw using your vagina? So you have to turn that on before you thrust up. Now, one of the best ways to protect your lower back, listen up here, okay? If you have a sore back, listen to me. One of the best ways that you can protect your lower back is a forceful exhale through the mouth. When you exhale forcefully through the mouth, in like a hiss through your teeth, you automatically draw your belly towards your spine and you automatically suck everything in and turn on your TVA. It's your body's natural reaction. So it sounds like this. Listen. Shh. Now you're probably like, holy shit, that was really loud. Okay. So it's almost like I'm saying shush really loudly, like shh. Okay. That is how you turn on your transverse abdominis. So here's what you do in a hip thrust. You put the bar on let's say you're on a Smith machine, right? You put the bar on your hips, you put your back on the bench, you draw your chin, you don't want to draw your chin to your chest, but you want to make sure that your neck is in a straight line, okay? So your neck isn't flopping back. The only thing that moves in a hip thrust are your hips. Your upper body never moves. I see people doing hip thrusts, right? And I see them like rocking their whole upper body. My back never moves on the bench. My head never moves. They stay completely still. The only thing that moves are my hips. So what I do, because I would hip thrust about 300 kilos, right? Which is 660 pounds. Now, the only way to get 300 kilos off the ground off the ground safely, is to make sure that your transverse abdominis is completely turned on. And here is how you do it. Okay. You can go back and listen to this. If you want to try this again in the gym, you want to just look at the time. If you look at your device, just check the time of when I was speaking about this and come back and listen to this point again, or this part in the gym. So here's what you do. So you take a couple of deep breaths before you thrust. So you're sitting there, you've pulled in your feet, they're flat on the floor, your knees are bent, you've got your back resting on the bench, you're going to try and thrust this bar up, okay? So here is what I do. I take a couple of big deep breaths, and then on the last breath, as I inhale, I draw my transverse abdominis up. So I suck my smoothie through my straw. And then as I exhale, I thrust up and draw my belly button to my spine. So it sounds like this. Okay. So I go, that's one. That's two. Now on the third one, at the same time as I inhale, I draw up on my smoothie straw. So I go, so I'm sucking the smoothie through the straw, and then I go, shh. And as I exhale forcefully through my mouth, I thrust up and draw my navel to my spine. So it's an inhale, draw the transverse abdominis up, draw the smoothie up through the straw, and then exhale, thrust up and draw your navel towards your spine at the same time. Then your lower back will be completely protected. It's the only way you can safely thrust a lot of load up into the air and not hurt your lower back. But you have to turn everything on before you lift heavy, thrust heavy, move heavy, or do any of this heavy work. It's like putting on a lifting belt. You know why you see people putting on lifting belts in the gym? They put on a lifting belt so that they can protect their lower back and protect their spine. But you don't even need a lifting belt when you know how to turn on your transverse abdominis. I wear one whenever I squat heavy because it just makes me feel more secure. But if you know how to turn on your TVA properly, and you can really put that belt on, suck your smoothie through your straw, draw your navel to your spine, you really will notice a massive, massive difference. Okay, so let's wrap this up and conclude it. So most back pain in squatting or in compound exercises comes from three main things, right? What are those three main things? Not turning on the transverse abdominis, not even knowing what it is or knowing how to do it, not activating the glutes correctly, which can be done by not bringing awareness to the glutes before you squat, but also by not going deep enough in your squat. And if you can't go deep enough in your squat, by the way, put 2 plates under your heels. Most people can't go deep in their squats because they don't have the hip flexibility. If you lift your heels up on 2 plates, that helps to take the pressure off and you will be able to go deeper. Also, squat on the Smith machine rather than a free bar, because it means that you're not dipping forward. The free bar tends to make you dip forward, especially if you're not used to keeping everything turned on. But if you ever squat with a free bar, before you even lower, you turn everything on. You never squat before everything is turned on. Your chest is turned on, your back is turned on, your quads are turned on, your glutes are turned on, your transverse abdominis is pulled up. Give that squat some strength before you even lower. And you will notice an enormous difference. And then the third reason is simply the glutes not being strong enough. I have built over the last 4 years the most enormous set of glutes. Like Mark, my trainer, says to me, he was telling the story the other day. It was hilarious. The first time I ever went to train glutes with him, and we were doing glute bridges, and he put one plate on each side, right? 120 kilo plate, and I was like, this is like, I'm like, well, should I say something here? That like my warm-up weight, okay, for glute bridges would be 100 to 140 kilos, right? That's my warm-up weight. What's 140 kilos? Let me pull out my calculator here, multiplied by 2.2. That's 308 pounds, right? My warm-up weight in a hip thrust is 308 pounds. So, and he just kept like adding more plates and adding more plates. He was like, holy shit. He tells this story. He said, I just looked at you, and he said, there's no man or woman that I have ever witnessed in my life who was hip thrusting as much as you. And even to this day, there's no one in the gym can hip thrust the weight that I can hip thrust. So, and my personal best is, 6 good reps with 4 spotted reps. He helps me pull up the last 4 with 300 kilos on the bar. Okay. And the reason why I can do that is because I spent so many years building my glutes. I've always been glute focused. You will never build your glutes through doing one glute day, right? Or one squat day. In my 18-month sculpted vegan program, it's an all over sculpt and shred. It's called. It's an all over body training, and we train glutes and hamstrings and quads twice a week. Okay, but in the beginning, the reason why we do that and we don't focus on glutes is because not everybody who comes into my 18-month program wants to focus on their glutes. It's a program called Sculpt the Body of a Physique Athlete. Okay, you can stand on stage after doing this program. It's full body, split body training, but it only has 2 glute days in it. But that's because not everyone who comes in wants to build big glutes. But we've just added, or we're adding actually, it's launching on the 11th of June 2020. We're now adding a glute specific program. We're not adding it to the Sculpt and Shred. It's a separate program. But I have decided to release, it's called the 8-week butt camp, right? And it's a program that is basically based on the work that I did in the very beginning, but with a lot more, because it's very, very focused. And my journey has been over 4 years. This is an 8-week program. So I wanted to really give someone incredible results after only 8 weeks. So, but everything I've learned about firing up the glutes, turning on the glutes, working the glutes, the maximus, the medius, the minimus, the pelvic floor, all of that is included in this program, and it's absolutely and utterly epic. But because the thing about squatting, or the thing about building your glutes, or the thing about glute bridging, is the more you do it, the stronger you become. The reason why I'm able to be the strongest person Mark has ever trained in the gym doing glute bridges is because every single part of the size of my glutes is muscle. There's no fat there. Well, there's a little bit of fat there, but not much, because I don't carry a lot of fat in my glutes. But my glutes have now, if you were to measure my butt cheeks, right, back when I started, there's a lot of photos on Instagram, my before and after photos. If you were to measure my butt cheeks and measure my butt cheeks now, I will have put inches, pounds of muscle. I'm sure I've put 1 pound of muscle, which, maybe 2 pounds of muscle in each butt cheek. Maybe more, right? Because I've put on, when I first started training, I weighed only 57 kilos. I now weigh 68 kilos, right? So I am 11 kilos heavier than I was when I started, which is 24 pounds. I put on 24 pounds of muscle since I started training 4 years ago. I am sure 4 pounds or maybe 6 pounds of that muscle is directly in my butt, right? How did I do that? Through focusing on it and wanting to change it. And the reason why now I have zero back pain is because I have enormous glute muscles. My glute muscles are doing what they're supposed to be doing. Are picking up the work. They're picking up the slack. They're firing everything I do. My walking, my running, my training, my squatting, my, jumping. Like your glutes are there are supposed to be come into play in everything you do. If you're a runner, you need to strengthen your glutes. If you're a sprinter, you need to strengthen your glutes. If you're a swimmer, you need to strengthen your glutes. If you're a bodybuilder, you need to strengthen your glutes. We just neglect the glutes so much, and they really are such an important muscle, not only to make the body look better. If you're a female, everybody wants to have a nice ass, but for more importantly, which is more what I'm about than anything, for strength and functionality, to keep your body healthy, to keep your body pain-free. I would rather be pain-free than look amazing. If you can be pain-free and look amazing, then, you've hit the jackpot, baby. That's what we teach in our programs. But I would rather be pain-free than look amazing, I would rather be, strong and whatever than be a big hot mess. So, but if you want to, if you want to do it safely, if you want to squat more, you need to squat more. But you need to squat more safely. If you want to glute bridge more, you need to glute bridge more. If you want to build up the muscles in your ass, you need to focus on building up the muscles in your ass, not over the long term. Like, I certainly don't do a massive amount of glute training now. I do like 2 leg days a week. One of them is glute focused, but that's only because I'm really happy with my butt now. I really do not need to build it up anymore. I just need to maintain what I have. But if you need to build up the strength in the beginning, like I did, you need to focus on your glutes. You need to focus on them hard, train them, 3, 4, 5, even 6 days a week, depending on how fast you want them to grow. And that is truly what will completely transform your body but you can't do any of this training unless you learn how to turn on your TVA, unless you learn how to suck up through that smoothie straw, draw your navel to your spine, perform the exercises safely. And not only can you do this in the gym, you can do it in yoga, you can do it when you're swimming, when you're running, anything. I want you to practice doing this, okay? As much as you possibly can. And you will notice an enormous difference in how you move, in how you train, and in how you live your life. So I hope that you enjoyed that episode. That was so much fun for me to record because I love talking about fanny farting and vaginas and penises and all the things that you're not supposed to talk about. Because you know what? I just think that, we're all human at the end of the day, and the absurdity of being human is just absolutely wonderful. And if we could all learn to not take ourselves quite as seriously as we do, I think the world would be a much better place. So thank you so much for listening. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Do not forget to leave a review on the podcast if you want to win a program, any program, even the 8-week butt camp, which is launching the 11th of June. If you're not on our mailing list, make sure you go to our website and download one of our free programs. And that means that you will be on the mailing list. But if you have Yahoo or Gmail or Hotmail or Outlook, they love to put all of our emails into spam. So if you sign up, you don't get it, check in your spam or your junk because you might find it there. Make sure that you are on the mailing list. If you want to hear about the 8-week butt camp, it's only going to be $97, even though it's an 8-week program. It comes with meal plans. It comes with macro counts. So if you don't want to use our meal plans, you don't have to. We teach you how to count your own. It has a full recipe section, has all of the training videos, explanations on everything you need to do. It's like, I think that I've just finished writing the PDF. I think it's like 120 pages long. Like, it's a very comprehensive training and it's an absolute steal at $97. And minimal equipment can be done at home or in the gym. And we also have a $10,000 competition as well. So whoever makes the biggest transformation, both in their glutes and their body, so it's a shred as well as a sculpt, to sculpt and shred your glutes. Whoever makes the biggest transformation could win. I think we've got $10,000 for first prize, $5,000 for second, $1,000 for third, $500 for fourth, and $250 for fifth. So 5 massive prizes, 16,000, I think it is dollars, 16,750 or something dollars of prize money, which is absolutely epic. I love giving away big prizes. And we just gave away like $13,000 it was to the winners of the Jailhouse Shred program. So if you want to see the kind of transformation you can make, go to my Instagram at thesculptedvegan. You can see past winners from the 4-week shred, most recently from the Jailhouse Shred, and you can see the kind of transformation that people make in my programs. And this one was only 4 weeks long. So imagine the transformation you could make in 8 weeks. Also check out my Instagram if you want to be kept up to date with details of when we're releasing. The challenge starts 22nd of June. So we're releasing on the 11th of June. The challenge starts the 22nd of June. You won't need anything more than, some weights if you have them home. You don't have any weights, you can use like a 5-liter drum filled with water. You do need some bands though, right? Some glute loops or booty bands or whatever to perform the exercises. So you will need to get some minimal equipment. But if you are training from home and you don't want to go to the gym or you can't go to the gym, it's no problem at all. This training can be done from home. The competition starts 22nd of June, runs for a full 8 weeks. Comes with a Facebook group and all that jazz that you would expect from me and all these epic programs that I keep writing for you. Blowing my own trumpet there a wee bit, but they are epic programs, aren't they? Anyway, I digress, guys. Loved chatting to you this week. Loved teaching this information. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Don't forget to leave a review on the podcast. Send me a screenshot and as a DM, you could win a program. And I will see you all next week for another episode of Strong and Sculpted. That's my late night FM DJ voice. You like it? Another episode of Strong and Sculpted, and I will see you all next week. From Kim, this is me, over and out. Goodbye.